Welcome back to another episode of the Live Your Dreams podcast. I'm your host, Joe Gawalis, alongside my fantastic co-host,
Chris Victor.
Chris. Today we are honored to have a very, very special guest with us, Brian Ide, a visionary filmmaker and co-founder of Grace-Based Films. Brian has dedicated his career to films that inspire and unite, and his latest project, A Case for Love, is timely and a powerful documentary that cannot be more relevant than the world we live in today. Directed by Brian Ide as well, A Case for Love is inspired by the teachings of Bishop Michael Curry, who many of you remember for his unforgettable sermon of the royal wedding of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. This film is going to take you on a journey through the lives of everyday citizens and public figures alike, all striving to live out love in the most selfless way possible. Brian, thank you so much for sharing your passion with us. Your mission and your storytelling is fantastic.
I'm grateful to be here. Grateful.
No, you are an inspirational individual. I mean, you do so much for the filmmaking community, for the world in general, through the type of films that you're putting out there. For our listeners, Brian, that want to learn more about you, could you tell us a little bit about Grace-Based Films and yourself as a filmmaker before we get started and talking about A Case for Love?
Absolutely. So I grew up in Iowa many, many years ago, and in high school and in college, I worked in a movie theater, and that's where I think this dream of like, how are in the world are these crazy things put together, and would spend late nights as a projectionist. And there were no mentors in Iowa in the 90s talking about film. And so I found my way into through Dallas into Los Angeles, and have been here for the last 25 years in various forms of in front of and behind the camera.
Sure.
And my world has just been my film school has been the entrepreneurial do by doing and fail by failing and to learn by that. And I've loved it. I've been grateful for that. So we've been in Los Angeles last 25 or so years.
Oh, beautiful.
No, that's fantastic. It's beautiful that you went to your film school, your mentors, by going to the movies. I mean, isn't that what it's all about, though?
Yeah.
You have to love. I always tell people that try to get into this business for the quick money or the fame, is you have to love movies and have a passion for what you're doing to even have a chance of surviving in this business. People think it's an overnight success, and it's 100% normally is not. There's always a lottery ticket mentality, but that's very rare.
Yeah, it'd be a lot easier to quit. I'd probably be healthier and saner if I would have done it a long time ago. But once it gets its hook in you, I think there's certain of us that it gets its hook and you can see the good that's possible through it, and then you just can't imagine doing anything else. So I agree with you that it's really, really hard, but the impact can be enormous too.
No, you are 100% right about the impact that media can have on the world in both a positive and a negative way. But you took the great route and have dedicated your career to the very positive way, a positive message that are impacting people around the world. Your films have a strong message. We'd love to hear more about your company and kind of the path you took in life and how you want to be a storyteller and how you want your legacy to be remembered.
Absolutely. So I am I grew up, like I said, in the Midwest. My father's a Lutheran pastor. My mother is a devout Catholic. So as a family, we grew up going to the Catholic church on Saturday, the Lutheran church on Sunday. And what it taught me very early on in my life is that there's so much more that connects us than what divides us. And I'm grateful to them every day for that. So I think I'm drawn to stories that are complicated stories, but also stories that bring people together and that they can see themselves in it. And so like maybe 10 years ago or so, I attended an Episcopal church now because I married an Episcopalian, and I was on the board of that church, and most of the conversations are around fundraising and, the keeping the doors open.
Sure.
That's not my gift. So I thought, well, maybe I could start telling stories that aren't being told in Hollywood. And it felt like to me at the time that if there was any faith element that was in a film that was coming through Hollywood, then it came across as, well, if your faith is strong enough, then the football team wins, or your marriage is reconciled, or, you find healing. And I thought, well, what about all the people who aren't finding healing, who aren't going to win that big game? And so I wanted to start telling stories for those people. And so all of our films have a universal theme to them, no matter what the content of the film is. And the first project we did was called Reconcile. And I think you can kind of see the poster right back there. And,
Beautiful. Yeah, absolutely.
And the theme of that one was just the challenge of loving the others in our life. And so our story had its own particular version of that. But the question goes to all of us, you know, and our other might be Republicans or Democrats or Jewish or gun owners or rural people. But it's the same thing that we all wrestle with. And it's certainly exacerbated, you know, right now. And then I think the response to that was such that we're like, okay, I think we're onto something. And so the next film was called This Day Forward, and that's literally, you know, just behind me. But the challenge of that one, the focus of that one was facing the unimaginable on a life journey, and everybody has a different version of that.
Sure.
And then that just took us to this next one, A Case for Love. But what I love about what Grace-Based Films does is that all of our films are funded entirely by donors. They're not funded. There's no investors. Nobody gives money to these films because they want to get rich. They do it because they want a message to go out, and it changes how we can hire crew and how we can get talent, and because people are drawn to the why of these compared to just the what. And so that's what Grace-Based Films is about. Is it just rolls, any proceeds that come from these films roll towards the next story, and I love being a part of that model.
It's such a beautiful business model that you guys have, and such a powerful thing. And I love what you're doing because, you know, we all know people that are in this type of craft, even people around the world. Hollywood kind of gets this bad reputation, right? It just is out there
for good reason sometimes.
No. Look, we're not saying that bad things don't happen, but what people don't realize is there is a sector of Hollywood, people that live in the community, even in Hollywood, that believe in, you know, faith-based, positive message films. People want to get the right message out there. So for everybody out there that thinks, you know, the Hollywood system is just this evil thing, there are people that live in the town that do want to make a positive difference, that want to make a change. And media is such a powerful way to get a message out there. So I love what you're doing because it's taking a medium and a craft that we all love, and it's showing that it's not completely demonized, right? That there is this kind of positive behind it.
Totally agree. And what I've found over all the years of doing this, and I think what people outside of Hollywood that tend to demonize Hollywood forget, is that the people that are working in it come from Minnesota and Alabama and Texas, right? They're all good at core people that just want to make art and use their gifts. And so I think you're exactly right. It's nice to change the narrative in a small way.
No, and that's beautiful. Please, Chris, go ahead.
I was going to say, not only do you wear your heart on your shoulder, but the placement of your poster behind you, it looks like the heart is on your shoulder. I like what you said earlier about the family values, that we have more in common than we have that divide us, something along those lines. That was beautiful, and I'm sure that's illustrated well in your movie.
I believe deeply that that's the case, and I've been on the road. So our last film, we were in 53 cities in 60 days, all driving. This one, we were in Australia. This one, we've been all over the country. And every single time I get back on the road, I'm reminded that we are way more connected than the headlines want us to believe. And that there are a lot of people becoming really wealthy by trying to say otherwise. And when you're just sit with somebody, I mean, we did on this most recent film, we did 250 man on the street interviews where we just pulled over on the Brooklyn Bridge or a farm in Pennsylvania or Minneapolis downtown, and across the board, I have no idea where somebody was in the political spectrum or where they believe on some social issue, because that's not what we were talking about. But we found common ground very quickly, and I think that's the case for most of us.
Yeah, no, I love that. And talking about connection and common ground, Brian, what's really interesting is when people want to take this journey, right? So many people are kind of intimidated to start on this journey. You came from the Midwest kind of states, and you came all over to Hollywood. What kind of first inspired you to take those first steps of that journey? Because again, to make this difference, to start making a change, if you want to in media, if you want to do something in any aspect, writer or entrepreneur, it takes those first steps. And it's a difficult thing to be somebody from that kind of area and move into this kind of completely different atmosphere, which is Hollywood.
Yeah, I agree. I think the thing that probably made me want to do it is some craziness. So I think, that's the thing. But I think I've been blessed that I've been surrounded by really good people that created my foundation and that were holding me up along the way. So I have to give credit to them. My parents were amazing, my friends, my community. That said, it's still really hard. And there were many nights I've lost so much sleep and been on meds and been in tears. It's really hard. And when I first moved here, I found that things were working better for me than other people I came out with.
Sure.
And I had a hard time getting up every day saying, okay, what can you do for me? Well, I knew somebody else was being taken advantage of.
Mm.
So we started a nonprofit called the Biz House. And the whole point of that for 6.5 years was safely integrating people into Los Angeles and just
good. That's just
house them
great.
for free. We did free seminars on just the reality, because when you're a big theater star in Dubuque, Iowa, or you're wonderful in your high school, then you come here and you think, well, it's just going to roll, and it doesn't.
Yeah.
It's a really tough thing. So I've been blessed by that foundation. And but I also, when I tell people when they're thinking about coming out, like, your job is to figure out how to safely still be here 2 years from now.
Yeah.
Like, that's what your whole is, to create that safe foundation, because it's not going to happen overnight. And most of us flame out, or we have some damaging experience and we go home. So, like, think through your long-term, and then that allows the best creativity to happen for me.
Thank you so much for sharing that, because there's so many young aspiring filmmakers, actors, people that want to be around this craft that are taking that leap of faith. And thank you for sharing that with them, because it's so important to get that reality and to say, you have to make sure you're going year by year, 2-year plans, 3-year plans, 5-year plans, because again, you're right. It's not going to happen overnight. Maybe it could. You never know. Most likely it won't. And people get disappointed very fast, and you can get caught in a whole whirlwind of negativity very quickly in a town like that, and anywhere you could. So not just
Exactly
that there, but that can happen anywhere, But again, around the arts and around that kind of area, it could happen very quickly. So really, thank you so much for sharing that with our listeners. It's very important.
Yeah, it's really about money, right? Like, when you start losing that security, you start making questionable choices and you sacrifice some of your morals, and what feels like a small thing in the beginning turns into a slippery slope, and then dangerous things happen. So I believe that, thinking differently through it. But I've been grateful. So your question is, how did I get here? I've had a lot of people lifting me up.
No, that's
why I get back.
I love that. That is so beautiful and so important. Talking about slippery slopes, right? It can happen to anybody, and not even in the moral sense. People can make bad business decisions, which again is immoral, doing the wrong kind of films, getting the wrong messages out there. But again, you took that right path, right? And we're going to now start talking about your beautiful film, A Case for Love, which is fantastic. We're very excited to hear all about that. And again, you went on this righteous path. You were helping people. You were forming community groups to get people involved with the Hollywood system, to not kind of get into that that darkness is out there. And at the same time, you're a creative. You started making other films before this. You opened up your own company, and it brings us now to A Case for Love. It's coming out today. People are going to be very excited to see this, and it's something very, very special. We'd love to hear more about that, especially from yourself.
Yeah, it's I'm very proud of this one, and it started for me back in February of 2020, when we thought we had another project lined up, and then a dear friend now, who's the number 2 at the Episcopal Church, where Bishop Curry, is the presiding bishop. He's kind of the Pope of the Episcopal Church. Came up to us and asked if we would be interested in a story like this, because Bishop Curry was writing a book that was half his message, half his life.
Okay, sure.
And I think their thought was, okay, it's one thing for somebody to write about it or preach about it, but it's a whole other thing to actually go on the road and be with real people and see, what does unselfish love actually look like. And then 10 days after that meeting, COVID hit, and the whole world turned upside down. And I think the thing that became really powerful to me about the opportunity to do it is, I'm from the Midwest, as I said, and I live in Los Angeles. So we live in these 2 very different worlds.
Sure.
And I've been blessed. I have a lot of red and blue in my family and purple friends. But in COVID in Los Angeles, it was intense. And when our bubbles get that small and we start losing our interaction with human beings, we start only being defined by our social media and our news choices. We start believing things, or at least I did, that my brain knew, okay, this is not true. Like, people from Texas or Florida aren't evil, right? Or them thinking that we're evil, or rural people are like, were, especially during COVID. Like, you see it and hear it enough, you start to believe it. And like, that was really dangerous. And so what I loved about this film was we got 8 people together, 3 vans of equipment. We just met in Minneapolis, and went and drove around and were with human beings again. And that's what this is a journey story. And what we found in the creating of it is, like, none of the people that are in this film are chosen because they're experts in any form of unselfish love. The point of it is that when you actually start sitting with human beings again, you realize that everybody's got a really powerful story, and it's enough. And so all we did was gather those stories, and we would go to Minneapolis, and somebody would say, "Oh, you're going to Nashville, you should meet with Tim Shaw." And then that became our next stop. It wasn't a pre-programmed thing. And then what we've done in the film is we've woven these 14 deep dive stories into 7 chapters. And the chapters,
sure.
Universal themes like love and loss, or being dealt a difficult hand in life, or answering the call. And so the hope is that somebody can see and watch the film and watch these chapters and see themselves in it, even if the love and loss stories about foster care, you may not be foster care, but you've experienced love and loss. And that's what we wanted to come through with this. So it is, what is unselfish love? What does that look like? And in a world where it feels like the whole narrative is divisive, it's a very hopeful story.
Oh,
I have a question. On answering the call, you mentioned that. Is that the call from God? Is that the call from our society? Where is that coming from?
That one is not. That's a total, just anything to anyone. So the really beautiful thing about one of the stories, there's 2 stories in that chapter. One of them is a family in Minneapolis who, the daughter was in her 20s, worked at a hospital, ended up meeting a refugee from Honduras. The refugee was pregnant, had 2 little children. The father was not around, and she was about to give birth to this new baby. And she had these infants with nobody in her life to help her. The daughter offered, "Listen, if you need help, like, we have a big family, we speak Spanish. If you need us to take these kids while you're in the hospital." And she said, no, I don't need that. And then the night before at midnight, she called and said, "There's nobody to watch my children." So this family that had, the extended family who had never met, all they did was answer the call. And it became a life-changing thing to both of them. So it wasn't just this white savior thing of, look what we did to help, but their lives have been changed by entering into somebody else's. And so it's that notion of seeing a moment and seeing a need and then answering the call, whatever it might be.
I really think this film, Brian, to be honest, you did answer the call, like you said. And even going back to, I was living in Los Angeles during the pandemic as well, and I was right on Formosa over there, which is such a busy area that became like a nobody around after that, which was very creepy in its odd way. It became this very odd feeling. I know you mean in Los Angeles particularly because you're used to all this activity that then became almost like a zombie town of nothing happening, right? It's very kind of awkward. But what you're doing is you answered that call. This film could not be more timely now, with people still coming out of that pandemic. There's still that impact in the world where people still kind of have this weird social angst around certain individuals. There's this kind of disconnect. And now with all the different political things going on in the atmosphere, we're at a very, very odd time in our world where it seems like we have this technological advantages and all these, things that are making our lives easier, but we seem so disconnected from each other. So it's so beautiful that you were able to answer the call with this movie, because really it's making a huge difference.
I feel that, and I'm grateful every day. And I love the distributor chose today to release the film as a lead up to the election, to be this answer to this narrative of divisiveness. And so there are a lot of politicians in the film. We have notable figures in there, and on both sides of the political spectrum. And I think that the message translates to us at any time, but it certainly translates as we lead into November 5th and try to heal after that, no matter what our choices were, is that like we have to see each other as human beings and not as demonic others, in the world. And so I'm grateful for the timing of the release.
No, it's so important. And again, I love, because in an odd way, media has so much to do with all of us kind of looking at each other as these, complete polar opposites. But what you're doing is using the same exact kind of platform and showing us that no, we're all have something in common. We have to have that love for each other. We have to be out there. We have to be open and be willing to accept each other and be more positive and find the positive in this world, because there is so much love and positive in this world if you actually spend the time to look for it instead of trying to make everything into this awful negative kind of tailspin. There's a lot of positive out there.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I was just thinking about the movement back when there was segregation years ago, and there was that 60s love and peace movement. This is something similar, but now you're coming through a different avenue.
Yeah, and all credit goes to Bishop Curry. It's really inspired by his message.
Sure, yeah.
Because I'm not the teacher. I'm grateful for that. Like, all I do is create space where people feel safe enough to tell stories. And then after all that, we sat down with him and said, okay, what does this mean? And his message is exactly what you had just said. Like, his version of unselfish love is not sentimental. It is not this naive romantic thing. It is a human being to human being kind of situation. And like, I think that plays itself out in different periods of history and is needed to rise up. And I think this is certainly one of those moments.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
How did it feel to work with such an influential person like Bishop Curry? I mean, that must always be incredible, right? You're like you said, you're making the safe space, right? You're taking his story, his message, and you're creating the space to get that out to the world. What an undertaking, but at the same time, what a realistic responsibility you had as a filmmaker.
Yeah, no, I felt that. I think that was part of the stress that I felt every day.
Sure, yeah.
This is a wide open thing, like love, like how it could go a million different ways. You would tell it different than me. And so I felt that responsibility of like, okay, I'm taking his message out to the world. Am I doing justice by that? We have stories that are about racial justice.
Sure.
Or African American people that have lived in really difficult situations. I haven't walked that walk.
Sure.
So how do I do that justice? We have LGBT stories. We have foster care stories. So I do feel that responsibility of, did we do justice to these people's lives and their message? And what I love about Bishop Curry is that, he's on the Today Show all the time. He's on Good Morning America. I mean,
sure. Yeah.
He's religious. It's because he speaks to the commonality that we hold as human beings. And to be around a leader in the making of this film that walks the walk, he's the same in a sweatshirt as he is in, a collar at a pulpit, gives me hope for leadership.
Beautiful. So well put. And again, to have leaders like that are out there in the community, these are the people that people have to gather around, right? That they're really trying to make that positive change and the impact. And like you said, though, it's not this, fluffy kind of way of putting it that's naive and a bunch of, we'll see what happens and, butterflies and rainbows. Yeah. He's putting it out there to really be like, we need to get things boiled down. It's a human to human connection. We have to look at this from a real perspective and treat it like it's not just some fluffy thing. And it's going to make a huge impact on people. I think that's great.
Absolutely. The very first story in the film is a woman, a beautiful story of a woman who was sexually trafficked by her mom from the age of 5. So this is not a yay, look at do-gooders in the world.
Yeah.
It is, how in the world do we navigate all kinds of journeys? And so that's why I think people see themselves in that is the variety of those stories.
No, that's that when you go to put a story together like this, Brian, this is something that's you're going to impact millions of lives, and in a way that people need to take a look at things and really start to wake up, but in a positive way at the end of the road. When you start to kind of, let's say, once you shoot the film, you gather everything together. Now you're getting into post-production, right? You said you had all that footage. You're traveling around. There's a lot of things you're doing. There's a lot of interviews, man on the street kind of interviews. You must have a ton of footage. Yeah. How is that process now translating into post-production? Because that must have been incredible now having to go over this. Bless you and the editor, because, I mean, that must have been quite an undertaking.
Yeah, I give all credit goes to her. We had this amazing editor. Her name is Zedia, and she had just flown in. She's from Russia. Had just flown in on the last flight to America before that airspace shut down for the war in Ukraine. And
wow, yeah.
What I loved about that is that our story is about a journey and the challenges across America. Well, she's living that same thing with her dear friends in the Ukraine, and so now it had a global perspective. Our composer is from Israel, and living that really complicated world. And so it came through. And so you're right. We had, I think, 600,000 words that we were transcribed with no story. There's no script in documentary.
Yeah.
And so we locked ourselves up in a room for about a year, and then just let trial and error and it start to come together. And I think the beauty of all of this is that story has power. And that's where we go, is we can introduce you into a world that you may not normally choose or even have access to in any of these stories. And because they're just story, and it's Brad's stories or Rose's stories, there's no propaganda that tells you you're wrong and I'm right. Here's how you're supposed to believe. Here's how. but can be unsettled, and I think all of us should be unsettled at time to go into places that we're not comfortable and see through other people's lens of what that life is like and that journey is like, and that to me is the power of story. So it started to reveal itself naturally.
That's beautiful, and that process must have been incredible to kind of. I would love to have been a fly on the wall for that to see this whole.
It's very boring. It's very boring. Yeah.
No, I've sat in the editing room before for like narrative features, never a documentary like that. So I would have loved to just like see that start to compile together without this huge script. It must have been fascinating, though.
Yeah, it was. I live in a world where I come up with an idea, and the people around me always make it better. So I have the perfect team.
That's great. That's fantastic. Now, talking about the perfect team, right? Now you get into the next phase, a lot of people in the business really don't understand or know about is distribution, right? The film's coming out today. Things are getting out there. Now, distribution is very tricky for filmmakers, right? There's a lot of times that especially independent filmmakers lose their film or lose control of their film in distribution, and especially a film like this with such an important message. How did that distribution process work for you guys, kind of picking the right distributor, kind of the direction you went in, and where are you going next with distribution? We're excited to hear all about that process.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I think, and especially in the last 6-8 years, I mean, it's the Wild West.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Yeah.
The rules that we thought existed before don't exist anymore. And so one of the many things that I'm grateful for with this film is because it's funded by donors, I don't have to choose distribution paths based on anything outside of getting the message out.
I love that. That's
great. At the end of the day, if I wanted to give it away, I could, which would be a really terrible model, but it's available.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it gives you power. So we were really fortunate that it had a theatrical release through Fathom Events on January.
Oh, good. That's great.
Nice.
And that's where, that model is, it's a one night only model for films. And what was amazing about that is that to me, the film is about bringing people together, and to have its first introduction to the country be in a space where people have to be together to watch it.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And have a shared experience was amazing. And most films don't get that. So that gave us this feedback all over the country of what that response was. And we're like, okay, we really know that it works. And so that happened. And then the response of that is what created this opportunity. And we're working with an amazing organization called Stonecutter. And they just had the digital space. And
great. Yeah.
So that's great. And so if your listeners don't understand, there's 4 tiers. I'll go through real quickly of how distribution works. In the old way, and it can only go one direction, right? It can't go the other way. So theatrical, if you get theatrical, it has to be first. And then after that, they call it TVOD, and that's what we're in now, is transactional video on demand. So any place you can pay to rent something, it's in all of those spaces, because nobody's gonna, once they can pay $5.99, they're never gonna go up to theaters and pay $15.
Yep.
So then the third tier after this season would be that we call it SVOD, and that's the subscription things we all know about, Netflix's and Peacock's. So after this phase, it would go to that next one. And then the last one is this new one that's happened in the last few years called AVOD, which is
everything now, right?
Right? It's like they'll just throw commercials in it. It's free. It's commercials. So it just works its way from one to the next. And we were given this opportunity to be with theaters first, and then now we're in tier 2.
That's beautiful. I mean, really, and it goes to show your message, the film. That's such a beautiful thing, because most films, especially now, are not getting the opportunity to even get close to theatrical release. For people out there, that says what Brian has created here, the beautiful story that the Bishops created and you guys did together. This is something very special, because most independent films are not getting anywhere near, like you said, a tier 1 theatrical release. Even close. And a lot aren't even going to TVOD anymore. Most are starting on AdVOD. I mean, most are just going to that 4th tier AdVOD right off the bat. So, you guys really, congratulations, because it says a lot about what you created.
Thank you. And it shows that there's a hunger for
100%
stories that are doing something different. Yeah.
No, that's fantastic. No, but very, very encouraging. Now, for our fans that are out there that want to learn more, that actually want to be seeing the film, where can they start getting involved? How can they get out there? How can they see this? I know there's going to be a lot of listeners that want to see what you're doing and want to get involved with this movie.
Yeah. The website for the film, the movie, like you said, is called A Case for Love. So the website, caseforlovemovie.com. So it's a real simple website. on there it lists all the places, but essentially any place that you could rent the Avengers, you could rent this film.
Great.
So
Nice.
if you use cable or Dish TV or DirecTV, or if you use Tubi, or if you use Amazon or iTunes, anywhere that rent or purchase movies in the United States and Canada, you can do the same thing with A Case for Love, starting 11 hours ago.
What a fantastic! Again, we talk about distribution, like I guess they used to call it windowing back in the day, right? So like now, that's a whole completely different thing. But it's beautiful to see your release getting like that, the theatrical, to go to TVOD like that, to have that opportunity to not only change lives, but again, what I love what you guys are trying to do at Grace Films is that you guys are really taking the proceeds and putting it into the next project. I love that because your message is so important. And the fact that the viewers that are listening today, I really just recommend anybody getting out there, making sure you purchase A Case for Love, because it's something so special. Because not only are you going to support an amazing movie and an amazing cause, you're going to be helping the next project get made. And that's so important.
Yeah, I agree. And I would, the selfish part is, please, go see the film. And the other part I would say to everybody, and I say this at the screenings I attend, is find your thing. Like, we all have the thing that can create ripples of good in this world. And 100% needs us to swing a little bigger in that space. And it doesn't have to be big. And some people are going to be these, incredible, iconic movements that they do. But a lot of people, it's answering the call or cooking, and you'll see all these things. So find your thing is a narrative that I would share with folks too, because we need all of us to do a little bit more than we're doing.
Brian, really, you are an inspirational individual. Everything you have done with your career really is inspirational to me. I'm sure it is to Chris. And I'm sure this is going to get a lot, right? It's kind of nuts here because we've already been on for 40 minutes. I'm getting the signal here. Wow. I can't believe we talked this quickly, this fast, because you are just, we could do this for hours with you guys. So again, obviously, we'd love to have you back on in your next film. You're somebody fantastic. We love your mission. You gave so much great advice to so many of our listeners. And literally every second, you almost gave another piece of great advice that just compounds and builds on each other. But I'm talking about now for like what was like a bumper for a, for just commercial sake. Can you give us like a 30-second to a minute little piece of advice for any aspiring filmmakers that want to get out there and, like yourself and so many great creators, want to make a positive impact on the world?
I would say for the new filmmakers, like, just do. I think we live in a time when technology and price points of gear and all of that has made everything accessible.
Yeah.
That like everybody's going to give you a reason to not do it. And so when I sit with young people that move here now, is like, take the phone, take the camera, do, because you will find your voice. Don't let other people tell you what your voice is. These systems that are put together, algorithms of Netflix or whatever that is, can be intimidating and make you feel like what you're doing must not be up to snuff. And I would just say the otherwise, like these unique voices that are really cutting through, and the world needs more of those unique voices. So I just say don't worry about being great, just do it.
I love it. Everybody, Brian Ide, what an incredible individual. Grace-based films. Is there anywhere we can learn more, again, about Instagrams, websites? We got it for the film, but again, I'd love to hear it again, just so our listeners at the end, they can know exactly where they can go to learn more about the film, yourself, and your company.
Absolutely. So for the film, and on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok is just A Case for Love. Or Case for Love Movie, depending on the one. And then the organization in the same space is Grace-Based Films. So website's gracebasedfilms.org. The movie is acaseforlovemovie.com.
Beautiful. Brian, thank you so much. You are truly inspiring. Your company is inspiring. We cannot wait to help support anything you guys are working on. Please let us know. Really, we'll have links in the description below to Grace-Based Films, A Case for Love. Get out there, people. Support filmmakers like this, support causes like this, support businesses like this. We are a community. This is what it's all about. Be sure to click on the links below. As always, the Live Your Dreams podcast can be seen on iHeartRadio, Audible, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, alongside with our video component on YouTube. Click the links, support Brian, support A Case for Love. These are the films you're going to want to get involved with. Be a part of the positive change. We couldn't stress that more. Brian Ide, thank you so much for being a part of Live Your Dreams podcast. You are truly inspiring.
Thank you. And thank you for sharing more stories like this.
No, thank you so much. We cannot wait for next time. We cannot wait to connect with you again. Yes. Everybody, of course, I'm Joe Gawalis.
Chris Victor.
We thank you all so much. This was an inspiring episode. We always look forward to these types of episodes, Brian. We mean that from the bottom of our heart. Thank you so much for making a difference in the world out there. We are going to be sure to make sure all of our cast and crew, people that work with us, are purchasing a case of love today. This is going to be fantastic. Thank you so much. We appreciate you coming on.
Thank you. Leave a review, folks. Leave a 100%.
Review. Don't forget, reviews are important. Get them out there. We'll make sure to do it ourselves. Thank you, my friend. We appreciate you coming on.